And the great king, and what a Caesar must do, or a future king of England must do, is purify himself first to make himself a receptacle for the angel of England, which is the highest ideal of the good for all the people. What has been is full of your resentments of the enemies that you've faced, politically, whatever, all the different loves and hates that you've been poisoned by, of this lust for competition, which is always there at the ground. Now, that needs to be dissolved. The cup needs to be emptied so you can be a receptacle for the future. Because what's happening with the people is you become stuck in, it's filled with garbage. It's filled with the garbage of the past. There is also the gem of the past, which is the eternal that was brought in of the past and the good. But you have to cleanse that low juvenile will to power, that low juvenile. As Jung said, Siegfried has to die so the holy hero can live. Siegfried, the juvenile hero, must die so the righteous man and the holy man can live. I want to talk about the ground of an ethnic group, the ground of a people, as this related to my essay, or my pamphlet, really. It's almost a small book of The Rise of the Dragonslayer, Chapter 2. Man, when he comes into the world, comes into a situation which is the thesis. The strife, or an interpretation of Heraclitan strife as fire, is the antithesis from the thesis. The will that comes to man, the fire, it opens history in a way. So that's why Heraclitus says war is the father of all. War is the father of cosmos, of an ethnic group's historical being, which is, a lot of it is born from war and strife. That's only part of it, though, because what has been and what endures of what has been isn't conflict, but what gives and grants love to a people, or what gives and grants the willed good to a people that makes it worth living. So whilst what I talk about in that essay, and I talk about the lion of the rage, whose rage at the ground of being, that is the will to power, the lion. That, what I'm talking about, is true of the temporal. But there are three things in how the situation of a people evolve. That is the past and the heredity, which is also their biology, which is their destiny, right? If you only have that picture plus the will, which is reincarnation too, you have the eternal return of the same. You have Sam Harris's deterministic being. Into that equation, or the present and what has been, you have providence. Outside the empirical self is the transcendent self. And what I come to in that essay, through it, is from the will to power, from the lion that is rageful, into the need for initiation, the need to break out of that. Because the reason why you can't just go with that, say you use the will to power, you defeat the regime, you punish your enemies, now what? Make the economy better? No, you're still stuck in this memetic conflict even when they're gone. There's no vision. Only the grasping of what has been. But there is good in what has been, because what has been is also the providence that's come in. What providence is, and what we're after, not just the historical egregore of a people, or even the good, the eternal of a people that's been brought in as providence. We're after the angel. Just like you have a guardian angel, so does a people. You have a transcendent self that's nested in the outside. It ingresses from the unknown into the known, which is apocalyptic time. It's the spiral into temporality, into the wheel. That is the futural. That is your highest ideal and your best self, and the your best of what you can be outside, before the beginning and after the end of time. And so the true ground of a people is that futural. It's the patriarchal good of that people, and also the matriarchal of that people's, not destiny. What's another word? Because destiny is heredity. It's a destination just based on the past. But it's their name and mission outside time. What's required of that, though, is to let go of the woundings of the past, to let go of that memetic circle that Rene Girard articulated so well, to let go of that eternal return of the same, and the memetic triangle, which just has you moving towards, and then you end up mirroring each other. The memetic triangle is based on a polemical conflict, and so it's empty at its ground. And so what fuels that egregoric people, all those will to power archetypes, is an emptiness of ground, because there is no futural seeding in, if that's what you go with anyway, if you're not providentially accepting a divine mission, or because every people has an archangel, has a divine hyper agent. But if you're possessed by that, you're possessed by the past, and you're actually not, you're just the recurrence of the same. There's nothing new under the sun, as Solomon said. But like I said, you have to get rid of what has been so it doesn't poison what can be. What has been is full of your resentments of the enemies that you've faced, politically, whatever, all the different loves and hates that you've been poisoned by, of this lust for competition, which is always there at the ground. Now, that needs to be dissolved. The cup needs to be emptied so you can be a receptacle for the future. Because what's happening with a people is you become stuck in, it's filled with garbage. It's filled with the garbage of the past. There is also the gem of the past, which is the eternal that was brought in of the past and the good. But you have to cleanse that low juvenile will to power, that low juvenile, as Jung said, Siegfried has to die so the holy hero can live. Siegfried, the juvenile hero, must die so the righteous man and the holy man can live. The healing must occur, and that occurs through collaboration. And the great king, and what a Caesar must do, or a future king of England must do, is purify himself first to make himself a receptacle for the angel of England, which is the highest ideal of the good for all the people, which exists outside of time, which knows the future for that people and knows what's best for every individual person of that people. You can see that, right? You can see that if you're, even after you win and you defeat the regime or whatever you do, you're still haunted by whatever the valuations are that occurred, of the people you murdered, or whatever it is, or the things you had to do to claw power. Your enemies still live in your unconscious after you've defeated them. They are part of that memetic triangle that you faced defeating them in the first place, and they will stop a future vision of the proper ideal of a people. And you can only get that through the dissolution and dissolving of initiation. Preferably that should happen before any conflict even occurs. Then you just do and have sanction to do divine will, like Arthur, to draw the sword, which is will, from the stone. And that's what a Caesar needs to do. And so there are many times in those essays where I articulated what the will to power was. I talked about the Grey Pilgrim. The Grey Pilgrim must become the White Pilgrim. Gandalf the Grey must become Gandalf the White through death, through destroying the Balrog. By destroying and killing the Balrog, that, and you know how you defeat the Balrog, who is the will to power, who is Satan, who is Ahriman? By turning away from the temptations, because he will offer you the world of what has been, of the eternal return of the same, and the lusts of the temporal. And at the ground of a people's being, when you finally defeat the adversary, and the Lord comes to live with you and within you, that angel it's of love, it's willed good. It's the best thing for you for the future outside of conflict. It also can likely be sanction, conflict, and judgment that'll be given to the empirical subject. Let's say an Arthur rises, he's given sanction to crusade, to destroy the enemy, destroy demons, for instance, right? But he's protected as the empirical subject from that and purified. He's not haunted by demons, like I mentioned earlier would happen to someone if they don't purify themselves. They're still retained in the paradigm of the regime and what the regime made them into in that conflict with the regime and evil. So that hopefully corrects with my essay which didn't take a position on God, which took a Heideggerian position by saying the gods and the old ones or whatever. But ultimately, when you keep mystically, and I say this now from experience by taking the next step, from moving from a description of something conceptually, of what the ground of a people's being are, to the other half, to moving towards providence. I went into this process being open to it being some sort of pagan thing as well, being, whatever the gods may be. But in the end, it's willed good. In the end, it's the savior who you collaborate with. Sorry to pagans, it's just not that way. Jung discovered the same thing, and I've seen the same thing too. It's Christ at the ground. Then that's who saves you from the adversary. You can call it what you want, but that's the incarnation came. And he listens to the language of moral logic. If you address the Father, you are addressing him. If you are addressing whatever you call that Father, if you are addressing it with the language of moral logic, that's who will eventually reveal himself to you. And there are no mystics. And that's the reason why there aren't any pagan mystics. Like, look at them. They don't talk about their religious phenomenology. I'm sorry, but they don't. So, yeah, if you want the raw waters of life, they come from Christ. They come from initiation, but also just the church. He still lives in his church. And that's where all the saints came from. So, again, as a postscript to the chapter 2 of Rise of the Dragonslayer is the death of a Dragonslayer. The juvenile hero must die so the future of a people can live and the true ground of a people can be revealed, which is willed good, which is love, which is a being, which is the highest value, which is God, which is an entity, which is moving from a organic or a mechanical process by calling things value and moving into an organic process and then a moral process, which means a process of beings and entities. That's what values are in the end. Moving out of demons and towards the hierarchies which are outside of time, and a people's greatest good exists outside of time in the eternal as an angel. And a Caesar will be granted that, not just his transcendent self, but after he initiates, after that, he'll be given, and this happens in biblical narrative, he'll be given the angel that has the people's destiny in it, which is its highest good. Just like your transcendent self, the divine friend knows what's best for you and guides you once you move towards him, also known as conscience outside of time, where true free will is. He knows what's best for you. His instincts are the ones that you follow. When this Ch.3 dies, when all those 4 instincts in alchemy become winged, when the lion, the ox, the angel, when the lion and the ox gain wings and they unite with the angel and the eagle, they all become divine versions of those instincts. And you receive divine impulsion and you follow it. And the more and more you get better at that, divine instinct is that you can just trust what immediately comes to you because it's future, or it knows the future. It knows what's best for you. And you're given signs about that. Follow the star. What did the 3 wise men do? Follow the star. That star is accessible to you in initiation, and you see it in active imagination. You see it as transparent in front of you, and you follow it. It gives messages, or mystically. You develop all these other senses that have been shut off from us since we've entered modernism. The mystic sense, the Gnostic sense, the magical sense, the Hermetic philosophical sense. All this stuff comes, and this is what a Caesar is going to have to do, or else he's just going to be another failed mustache man of modernism. A king of the future needs to be an initiate. More of us need to be initiates. God wants the spirit and the intellect to unite. The Lord wants us to experience him in the most raw capacity, like saints do, especially now as AI rises. What he wants is a gathering together. What he wants is the healing of the heart and the peace of the heart, to stop you from being a homo provoked, from being, instead of, you're not homo sapien, you're not rational. You're just homo provoked. And it's time to come back to the logos, to become homo logos again. And in conclusion, that's all I really wanted to talk about today, to address the other part of the equation of what I articulated. It was true what I was articulating in that essay. It's true of temporality and the heredity and the will, even the arbitrary will, but also what has been of providential. It's true of the past and the present, but it's not true of the future. And what has to be cleaned is the past, present, the will, the thought, and the feeling, to escape the will and the thought, to escape the thought, to escape the reflective dead modernism. You have to cleanse it and purify it so you can have the clean ideal to move towards. And so that's what was missing, the true ground of being, which is love, which is will, or willed good, if you need those Platonic terms to talk about it. The good, the true, and the beautiful. But ultimately, it's way, truth, and life, because those terms are connected to a living being who is the incarnation. God bless. And bless him that heals us.